You know that feeling, right? When a child seems perfectly healthy, but getting them to school feels like an absolute impossible battle. It's a struggle that can leave families feeling totally exhausted and alone. Well, today, we're diving into the world of the can't-go child. It's a challenge officially known as emotionally based school avoidance, and we're going to see how it's not about a child being defiant, but about some really deep-seated distress.
And just how big of an issue is this? Well, according to the Department for Education, a staggering 7.2% of pupils in the UK were absent during the 2023 to 24 academic year. Now think about that for a second. That is a huge number, and hidden inside that statistic are thousands upon thousands of kids who aren't just skipping school, they are genuinely, emotionally unable to attend.
And this brings us to a really crucial point. We have to understand the difference here. On one side, you have what we traditionally call truancy, which is often seen as a choice, right? It's a case of, I won't go. But on the other side, you have emotionally based school avoidance, or EBSA, and that is rooted in a genuine, overwhelming feeling of, I can't go. Getting this difference is, well, it's everything. So let's get into it. What exactly is EBSA? It's not some formal medical diagnosis you're going to find in a manual, but it's a term that's become widely used because it perfectly describes a very real mental and emotional health issue that really impacts a child's ability to just go to school. At its core, EBSA is this. A child is experiencing such intense negative feelings, we're talking anxiety, fear, just total overwhelm, that the idea of attending school feels completely impossible. And what's really important to know is that EBSA is often linked to other things, like anxiety disorders or neurodevelopmental conditions like autism or ADHD, which can make that loud, busy school environment feel especially tough.
So how do you spot it? The signs of EBSA aren't always a giant flashing red light. They can be subtle, and they're really easy to mistake for other things. They can show up physically, emotionally, and in a child's behavior.
So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, one of the biggest clues is that a kid struggling with EBSA often seems totally fine at home or on the weekends. They're happy, they're engaged. The distress is very specifically triggered by the thought of going to school.
You might see those frequent, mysterious stomach aches or headaches that just seem to disappear on Saturday. Or it could be real emotional distress. We're talking crying, full-blown panic attacks, or even anger right before it's time to leave for school. Sometimes it's more specific, like trying to avoid certain classes or even certain people. The key is, the child often wants to learn, they just feel like they absolutely cannot cope.
Now this is so important to get. EBSA is almost never caused by just one thing. It's more like this complex, tangled web of different factors all piling up and putting immense pressure on the child. So let's try and untangle a few of the most common threads.
First, let's look internally. A child might be dealing with some pretty significant anxiety. It could be social anxiety, separation anxiety, you name it. Things like depression, OCD, or even PTSD can play a massive role. And for our neurodivergent kids, those with autism or ADHD, just the day-to-day demands of school can be incredibly draining. And you can't forget chronic physical illnesses, which can just add another heavy layer of emotional stress. Then you've got the school environment itself. This can be a huge source of stress. We're talking about things like bullying or feeling left out, an intense fear of failing tests, or just sensory overload from noisy hallways and crowded lunchrooms. For some kids, that can make school feel like a really unsafe, overwhelming place. Even good changes, like moving to a new school, can be a trigger. And finally, of course, what's going on at home can play a part. Things like conflict in the family, financial worries, or maybe a parent's own health struggles. All of these things can reduce a child's ability to cope with those outside pressures, making the mountain of school feel even more impossible to climb.
Okay, so we've walked through that complex web of problems. It's a lot. But what about the solutions? Well, there's a really promising approach that deliberately shifts the focus away from digging into all those past issues and instead looks forward to building a better future.
This quote, right here, it really captures the whole spirit of an approach called solution-focused hypnotherapy. Can you just imagine the relief for a family that's been worried sick, thinking they have to revisit every painful experience? Instead, the message is clear. Our focus is on progress. We're looking forward.
So what is this thing? It's a really powerful one-two punch. First, it uses solution-focused talking therapy to help a child figure out their own strengths and goals. Then, it adds clinical hypnosis, and we're not talking about stage magic here. This is a state of deep, guided relaxation where the brain is just more open to positive suggestions.
The whole goal is to empower the child to build their own way forward.
Now, a brilliant part of this approach is how it makes brain science simple and easy to understand. Therapists often use this fantastic metaphor. You've got your rational brain, let's call it the wise owl, and you've got your emotional, protective brain, the guard dog. For kids with EBSA, that guard dog is working overtime, seeing threats around every corner. So the mission is to help the wise owl gently calm that guard dog down.
The whole idea is to use simple metaphors like turning down the dial on anxiety or emptying out the stress bucket. This does something amazing. It externalizes the problem. All of a sudden, it's not the child's fault, it's just a part of their brain that has gotten a little too protective. This simple shift in language takes away the blame, and you know what? It creates so much hope.
So, what are the actual tools used to make this change happen? Let's look at a few of the core techniques that help a child start building confidence and literally create new, more positive pathways in their brain.
Okay, this one is one of the most effective tools out there. It's called the scaling question. A therapist might ask something like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is you're feeling super confident, how do you feel about going to school tomorrow? Now, if the child says a 3, the focus isn't on why isn't it a 10? No, it's about celebrating that 3 and then asking, wow, a 3. What would need to happen to get to a 4? It makes progress feel small, manageable, and totally achievable.
Next up, therapists use what are called exception and strengths questions. They're basically hunting for any time when the problem was even a tiny bit better. So even if a kid only managed 1 hour at school, the question becomes, wow, that is amazing. What superpower did you use to do that? This helps the child start to recognize their own inner strength and their own successes, no matter how small they might seem.
You build momentum with small, realistic goals. But here's the clever part. They're framed as experiments, not pass or fail tests. An experiment might be just getting dressed in your school uniform. And if it doesn't work out, it's not a failure. It's just data we can use for the next experiment. This totally removes that crushing pressure to be perfect.
And this is where the hypnosis part really shines. In that calm, super relaxed state, the therapist guides the child through a mental rehearsal. They're visualizing themselves walking into school feeling calm, maybe saying hi to friends and taking part in a lesson. Their brain actually gets to experience success before it even happens, which makes doing it for real feel so much more possible.
So you see, this whole process isn't just about getting a child back into a school building. It's about equipping them with truly priceless skills for life. They learn how their own brain works, how to manage their stress, how to spot their own strengths, and how to set goals they can actually reach. I mean, these are the absolute building blocks of lifelong resilience.
And that really leaves us with a powerful question to think about. In a world that so often tells us we have to dig into the past to find the root of every problem, what if the most powerful way forward isn't to focus our energy on where we've been, but on where we truly want to go?